if that works okay. So Pedro or Craig, do you want to start with a little bit of an overview of how GitHub works and how they can get their data on that?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's see. GitHub. I don't know if everybody is familiar with GitHub. So I'll give a very short introduction to GitHub.
So, do you want me to show my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you give me the perspective? Ask me to share a GitHub screen with you guys. Okay.
So GitHub is a website where people share code. That's how it was invented. And it's now the primary place where people share open source code. And you see on the screen, we went to github.com, and I think they said they have more than 1 million repositories, and that's all the word to talk about. If you want to share code or data, you can put it in, you can define a GitHub repository and put it there. Now, one of the things that is very nice about GitHub is that it keeps track of old versions. And every time that you change anything and you put it back into GitHub, it allows people to compare how the new version differs from the old version and so on. So on the screen, you see the GitHub repository for Cooper Hewitt. And they actually have a whole bunch of repositories. You can see them there on the screen. Some of them are code repositories, and some of them are data repositories. So I think they share not just their data, but I think a lot of the code that they use to process their data and create the websites, and I don't know what else. But you know, it's there. So if we go to one like here, Slack/API, it usually has a little README file that describes what it is. And very critical, it always has a license. Can you make the text bigger so people can see it? So this is the license of that software. The distribution used in binary form is permitted provided that the following conditions. So you must retain this copyright notice, even in binary, and that's pretty much it. So every GitHub repository has a license that specifies what you can do. Now, one of the things that is very nice in GitHub is that here on the right, you can actually download the whole repository. So you can here, just clone it into your desktop, which means that you get a copy on your computer of everything that's in the repository. And then the way that this works in a social context is that you can copy everything to your own computer, you can make changes, and then you can click on that pull request link and submit your changes back to the owner of the repository. Now, the owner of the repository can then review the changes that you submit and then selectively accept, whichever changes they deem to be users. So this basically opens it up to the community to basically improve the source code or the data that people put in GitHub. So any questions so far? I'll take that as no questions. So if we go back here to Cooper Hewitt, and then we scroll, we see that here they have a repository called collection. And it says it's the collection database, and it was last updated on February 19. So if we click there, then we see all the folders that exist there, the departments, exhibitions, meta, objects, people, periods. So they have the whole thing there. They have a license, CC10 universal. So this is how they are sharing their collection. And then if we scroll up here, it has a little description. It says, they're committing to making their data available, and so on. So we can then say click here on objects. And so we see a whole bunch of folders. They were updated about a month ago. I'm going to click here on the first one, 180. It goes to more folders. And then here we see an object. And so I can make this a little bit bigger. So this is called a JSON file. So we can see from the extension, this is ID 180 blah 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 .json, and the data is here stored in what's called a JSON object or a JSON document. And we see, it has an ID, it has a TMS ID, the accession number, the title. Some of the fields are null. It has the dimensions. So it pretty much has all the data that probably exists for the website. And we can see the history. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4 commits to this object in different dates. So we see that they have revised it a few times and so on. And out here, up here on the right, left top right is the fork. So I can make a copy of this object if I wanted to, and then edit some field that I thought was incorrect, and then submit a pull request. And this would go back to them, and then they could decide to accept it or not. And if we go back here to collection, where am I? Go back here. Then, sorry, I got lost here. So back to collection, and they have people. So let's see what's there. I'm just going to click on one, click on another one, click on another one. So you see there's a lot of data here. And this is Jean Lauer. And, they have a country ID and a biography that's not there, and so on. So anyway, so this is one way that we talked at the workshop that I was suggesting people could share their data. which is just create a whole bunch of JSON documents and put them on GitHub.
But even if that's intimidating, you could just do the simpler thing and just create a spreadsheet and share that as well. It doesn't have to be a JSON document. I mean, sharing in general is good.
Yeah.
If you know how to create the JSON, that would be even better. But it could really be shared anyway. I think the key is you need to decide on your license and make the data available.
Yeah, so they here, I mean, apparently they have about their exhibitions, so they have a lot of data here.
I just wanted to reinforce what Craig just said. So for some of you, I have a feeling that this may seem complicated and not something you're ready to do, and that's fine. It's an option. It's an option that would make it easy as a collaborative to move forward and share data. It would make it easy for ISI to work with the data. But that's not the only option. Craig mentioned spreadsheets, but you have TMS and all kinds of things that you could submit to ISI for the step where we move forward to convert your data to linked open data and proceed toward publishing it. This is an option some of you expressed a lot of interest in knowing more about today. And I know some of you have done this already. Jeremy, what happened to you? What's your experience with this? Maybe he's not, I don't know if Jeremy is on, but I saw Indianapolis had experience with the GitHub. He's just a second. Okay, he's muted. Wait a moment, folks.
This is Shane. I have a couple of questions, if y'all don't mind answering those while we're waiting on to hear from Jeremy. The first, Pedro, you covered some information about the license on that. Is that just going to be up to the individual institutions to just make sure that there's a document in there with licensing language, or is there a specific format that we need to use or that will be expected for us to use if we're going to upload to a repository like this?
You get to pick your own license. So there's a standard document called license.md, and that's where you stick in the language of your license.
And a good place to start, if you're not familiar with license, would be look at Creative Commons. They have a whole series of licenses that you can choose from. And I think the best thing, thing I would recommend is to use an existing license rather than to make up your own.
Okay, so that's basically just make sure that we have correctly formatted content, upload that as license MD, and that's good enough?
Yeah,
okay.
MD is Markdown, which is the sort of text editor that they use in GitHub, which is a simplified version of Wiki.
Okay, perfect. The next question I have is GitHub the only option for doing this if we wanted to do this, or would something else similar to like Bitbucket or something? Okay, is there a benefit to using one or the other, or all of them?
I'm not familiar with Bitbucket. I know it exists. GitHub is the biggest one and the most popular one and the one that's mostly used for open source.
Okay, so it's a matter of just more eyes being on the GitHub repository than the other similar services?
That's for sure, yes. And the other thing is that the GitHub tools are very good.
Gotcha.
So the tools to compare, to download, to upload. The whole ecosystem is very well supported.
There was an article about GitHub, I think it was in Saturday's Washington Post, how the government is moving in that direction now with GitHub, and all of what Pedro just said, how useful it is and how well thought out.
Sure. Okay. And the last question I have, and this may be a bigger question than what we want to go into right now, but Could you talk about a couple of ways or the best ways to convert data from a spreadsheet format into JSON? Are there any tools out there that will allow us to do that easily or more automatically?
I mean, that's a good question. You could use, we could do it in Karma. You could do it in Karma. I'm sure that there's out there spreadsheet to JSON converter also. Also, you can put them up as XML if you wanted XML, and that's what you can produce. One good thing to do would be to have something that readily exports from your TMS system so that you can automate this without a lot of processing steps to just make it easy to just update the data in bulk.
Yeah, so let me just elaborate on that. So for example, one of the things we did with SAM was, we in Karma we took their data, which they exported from their I guess it's their web version that they're giving us, and we built the models in Karma, and that means that if ever we decide to update the models or we need to tweak the models or change them in some way, then the data, it doesn't mean that all they have to do is actually republish the models that we built in Karma that describe the mappings. And then they can just automatically recreate the data set from their exported data. So the advantage of finding some way that's easy to export from your existing system, so that as the data that's being maintained in your existing system changes, then it's really easy to update the linked data later.
Yeah, but there are two things here. One option is to share the raw data even before it's converted to linked data. And then, of course, the second option is to share the linked data in the same way, also in GitHub. And I think there are some linked data sets in GitHub, but that option is not as popular because, there's just less linked data. So, like this museum maybe doesn't have linked data, but they put all the data out there for people to use it.
Yeah, but my point was that sharing the raw data in a way that's easy for you to regenerate is a really good idea.
Yeah.
So that so that it's easy to sort of go back and update the data later. If you're maintaining the data on your internal servers in some existing system, then ideally you want to be able to republish that information as it gets updated on some regular basis.
So I see a question from Catherine. So they didn't use CDoc CRM, and so Kathy, should I read the question, or do you want to ask the question?
Yes, I can. I'll just jump in. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm interested in is the way that Cooper Hewitt has made all of these separate repositories for different elements of the data set. And I was wondering how that sort of coincides with what we were talking about doing at the workshop when we were thinking of publishing out or delivering data to GitHub that included exhibition information, for instance. Would it be useful for us to do exactly what they've done here and pull those data sets separately, because it's obviously a lot easier to do?
Okay, so I think it would be useful. Now, of course, doing it in CDoc CRM would probably be better, but there's also a lot of effort that needs to be put in to convert the data to CDoc CRM. So this is the first step. That's the easy step, to share the data, and I think this is a very good step.
Pedro, wouldn't it be that if you take the Cooper Hewitt approach, that ISI could then pull the data and run it through Karma with the CDoc CRM?
Yes, absolutely.
So that the output still would be CDoc CRM map data, but it wouldn't be happening before it goes on GitHub. It would be happening as it goes through Karma.
Yeah, so I think in that case, you could have two repositories in GitHub or one repository with different directories where you could have the raw data, say the raw data in one repository and the converted data in a separate repository. And so people who wanted to use, say, the CDocCRM data could just go to the CDocCRM repository for the museum and download the data from there. If they just wanted the raw data because they wanted to do something else with it, they could get the raw data.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say my microphone is working now, so.
Hey, Jeremy. Go ahead. If you
I don't know if you have any specific questions or.
Do you have a sense of how many people have actually used your GitHub data, or why did you go with GitHub, and has it been a good experience?
Well, I think that, I mean, the GitHub data that we put on there is for our previous collection schema. That's why it's not been updated for so long. And I don't know if we've had a lot of people use it. It was actually put up in collaboration with Cooper Hewitt, so we could create kind of mappings between the different ways that we have our data stored, so we could kind of create relationships between them. And I don't know how that progressed in the past, but it is just nice to have the data out there so people can create those relationships between it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. More yeah, Rachel's going to ask.
Well, that leads me to a question, Pedro, Craig, if you know, does GitHub provide any analytics about use of the data, or who searches the GitHub site, or who downloads from it, or any of those things, metrics?
No.
Yeah, actually, yes, it does. If you click on the graphs over here to the side.
Where? Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you go to the network, I believe. No, not network. Where is that? You can see traffic. I know you can on here somewhere.
So you can see traffic of commits. So you can see, who has changed the data, who has contributed to it. But I don't think they have a way to actually. So if people fork it, it'll show up here. But if people simply copy the files down, then it doesn't keep track of that.
No, actually, if it's a repository that you own, there's another tab that's available there that's called Traffic, and it does show you the visitors and what pages they visited.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, because we always wondered about that.
Yeah, that's nice to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay.
Because that's been an issue for us on our own repositories.
Yes.
This is the great thing about our collaborative with the diversity of expertise that we have. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay. Kate has a question. Kate, you want to state it, or should we read it?
I'll state it. That's fine. My question was, I was thinking about all of us publishing our data sets to GitHub, and one question was, would we have a shared repository, or would we each have our own individual repositories? I mean, that's kind of a small detail, but my larger question was, is there a value in there being uniformity across the data sets? Because I was thinking of an instructional document that could help us figure out, okay, step one, build a TMS export, you know, step 2, publish your raw data in JSON, or if you don't want to do that, publish it in a CSV file, or if you don't want to do that, publish it as Excel. You know, step 2, like, you know, I don't know, just something to help the group uniformly publish, but I don't know if there's any value in the data sets being more uniform.
I think this is a matter of opinion, I think. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have different questions in there. So my recommendation is for every museum to have their own GitHub organization that they own, and their own repositories that they own and control, where they are the ones that can, you know, do commits and publish the data, and everybody else can submit pull requests, which are basically requests to incorporate somebody else's changes. But each museum would sort of own their own repositories.
Okay.
And I don't know if you intended this or not, but we are working on the roadmap.
Okay.
The roadmap is going to touch upon, if you don't want to do GitHub, then you could do XML. So it may touch upon some of those choices, different options that you were mentioning. My thought was always, and anyone, you know, Dwayne or Neil, I'm sure you have things you can have here, that while the CDOC CRM, we want to be on the same page in how we express relationships. And that's the kind of harmonization of with our data. But we do also want to explore different types of data. Some of you may want to have exhibition data, provenance, but not all of you. And that if the data does not have to be standardized in that sense. We want short records, long records. That's part of the challenge of the project, and to demonstrate, you know, how linked open data and the roadmap and process we've chosen can handle all of that. Does that help at all?
Yeah, that answers my question very well.
This is Dwayne. Let me just echo what Eleanor just said. I think that, I mean, if we go back to the example that Jeremy gave of early work they were doing between IMA and Cooper Hewitt for the purposes of sort of crosswalking and sharing, they were both putting data up, but the goal was to be able to pull that data down and connect it up to each other so they could work between it. And I think that's a key goal of AAC. And so your original point, which was the question of publishing data in a similar way, is very important because it reduces the amount of massaging and secondary processing and other kinds of things that have to be done as we pull data down from multiple institutions. So the more we can be in harmony earlier, reduces a lot of extra secondary and tertiary work in the background.
Yeah, but I don't want people to get in the way of actually just publishing the data, because, you know, one of the things that you know, we've done in Karma is to make it relatively easy to take data in whatever format it's in and then convert it into data that's then published with respect to CDOC CRM. So we can you know, not without too much effort, quickly bring data in from lots of different formats and then have it all end up in sort of a uniform way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because basically we have an agreement on what is the common format that all the data should be in. It's the CDOC CRM.
Yeah.
And so you know, I think part of the idea of using GitHub is to say, okay, let's lower the barrier to get started to the lowest that we can lower it, which is, you know, publish your raw data without having to first come up with agreements on how to format it and so on, because we do have an agreement. It's CDOC-CRM. The idea here is just let's get the data out in its raw format so that we can get off the ground and then just map that data to the agreed upon convention that we have, which is the CDOC-CRM.
So in a way, what Pedro just said about getting off the ground and publishing your raw data somewhat touches on the other question I heard from some of you when we had telephone conversations, and that is your concern about getting the data ready to publish it. I know you're concerned, you have missing data, and you want your curators engaged in validating the data and participating and filling in what's missing. And for example, Colby, you expressed that particular point. How is it going since we spoke?
It's going fairly well. I think there's some issues just kind of getting off the ground, getting that kind of over that hump of people getting excited about the project. And I think that's what we've encountered the most, is that there's maybe some hesitancy to reallocate time from exhibitions and other sorts of projects like that to kind of going through data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what's happening? Okay, I was looking at the screen. How about anyone else regarding that experience of?
Someone's got us on hold.
There's some nice physics.
Anyone else having similar concerns about getting the data ready, or it's the difficulty in a museum with busy schedules and commitments? Get everybody on board. Because in terms of timetables, it might be helpful just to run through this again. We're working, the project officially ends end of April, the Mellon grant. But the report to Mellon isn't due until July. In the meantime, we are going to prepare, or it's already in process, the roadmap. We have to get more comments. We want to have the roadmap, have Dwayne and Neil and Craig and Pedro weigh in on the roadmap. And then we plan to get it out to all of you for comment to look at in April. Then we proceed to start preparing the report to Mellon, which is a very strategic document because we want Mellon to look at the challenges we want to address, the next steps, and invite us to submit a grant proposal. Those are the things that are critical over the next few months. Once they ask us, which we hope they will, to submit a grant proposal, we then, start to do so. And I know that Jenna has a lot of experience with those things. It takes a special knack in terms of preparing them. We do have other options, though, if Mellon doesn't ask us to come back and submit a proposal. That includes the Institute of Museum and Library Services, as well as some other foundations that we can approach. But it gives you time, all of you time, between now and July to work on your data if that's possible. It's not something you have to do overnight. Any questions about those aspects? About the next steps and what's involved, or any other questions you'd like to ask about GitHub or anything regarding the, or even karma?
Eleanor, this is Catherine. I just have another question about the data. I'm not sure if we really resolved this when we were in Washington, but what are people feeling about publishing data for works of art that are under copyright? Is it useful for us to publish the data and just not image links, which would be fine for most people, or what? I was wondering what others are thinking about that.
This is Craig. I think it's useful just to publish whatever's available. I mean, even if you can't show the image links, I think it's fine to publish the data. I mean, there's all kinds of applications that probably we can't even imagine that people might want to do, even if they couldn't show an image link. So Jeremy sent me a screenshot of the GitHub page showing the traffic.
Wow.
I don't know if you guys can see it now, but I just pulled it up there. So it shows the number of clones of the repository and then the visitors over some period of time. Looks like since the beginning, or since March 10th. So I'm guessing that you probably can look at any period you want. Jeremy, is that right?
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how to do that.
But this is very nice. You can actually see how many people viewed your
I think
data,
you can.
how many unique visitors you got. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
We didn't know this feature existed. That's very useful.
Yeah. But to go back to Catherine's question, I think we all agree that if you're comfortable publishing the data without, I mean, even if there's no image link, because it's under copyright and you can't provide an image link, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think that still would be useful.
Yep.
I think it's up to it's your discretion. Any other specific, any questions about the roadmap or the timing or the next steps or?
So, Ellen, I guess one question maybe you want to ask people, or they could do it offline, is to get a sense from people whether or not they're planning to share their data, or under what time frame they could do that. But I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but maybe sure. Ellen, you could just ask people to email you that information, so you just have a sense of where museums are in that process.
Absolutely.
I mean, that would help in the proposal, right? To be able to say to Ellen that, okay, here's our schedule for the various museums and when they expect to be able to share data with us to continue the process.
Right. Yep. Anything about the, I should also taking advantage of this opportunity, do people have any questions about the minutes or the summary that was sent out? I mean, we talked about it when I called, and you gave me, some feedback. But this is an opportunity to ask any additional questions you might have right now if you had afterthought. Yes,
we're also happy to take questions about any of the stuff we covered in the workshop. If people have questions or things they're confused about or things they'd like to discuss, please bring them up.
Yeah, I think one thing that I wanted to clarify with respect to GitHub is that GitHub would be a way to share the data, but it is not a way to have data that is used in applications directly. So GitHub frowns upon people using their website, their repositories to drive, websites with a lot of traffic. So GitHub is a platform for sharing the data so that other people can download it and use it. So if we were to put all the CDoc CRM documents on GitHub, then the idea is, GitHub is not going to be the place where people, write queries. People would download the data from GitHub and They put it in a triple store or any other kind of database and then run their applications on their own database.
I do have, while people are sort of chewing on that, I do have one question, and it's directed toward Kate. Kate, we talked about your interest in curatorial notes and the grant you have from the NEH, and also that Emmanuel had come to help you sort of look at mapping to the CDOC CRM. How did that go?
Well, that's we had such a rich experience, and we're so lucky to have Emmanuel here. We so just for the group, we have a planning grant to see about digitizing the contents of our curatorial files, which have a lot of flotsam and jetsam and different stuff in them. And as part of the grant, we were able to have a technical advisory group work with us. And we decided to work with Emmanuel on figuring out if we could map the contents of the curatorial files to the CDOC CRM and to learn about data modeling. So it was a real game changer for us. I think we were very much, we learned a lot, and it was and Emmanuel and I had talked a little about how we could share that with the rest of the group. What we decided was that we had two areas that we would focus on. One would be provenance, and the other would be bibliography. And those things are relatively straightforward to map to the CDOC. So for us, I mean, it really came down to trying to categorize documentation into areas that support the artwork rather than building data maps or data modeling around individual people or books or journals or things like that. So, I mean, it was a range from big picture to very granular details, but you know, settling on provenance and bibliography. And what's great is that, I mean, CDOC supports documentation that supports research areas like provenance. So you can have a provenance episode and then have documentation that supports it. I mean, that's my novice interpretation of it.
So you feel that CDOC CRM is less foreign now, maybe?
Absolutely, a lot less foreign. We've started some basic data mapping. I mean, that being said, less foreign doesn't mean that we've actually completed our own data model yet. We have a long way to go. So, I mean, less foreign is accurate. We learned so much. It's a very big topic, though. It's a big topic.
Right. Right, and we are, and of course, as you know, we mentioned during our meeting, we want to include some hand-holding there with the CDOC CRM through expertise, well, like Emmanuel's expertise, but also with Stephen Steed and CRM experts, so that, because I think that is, again, the relationships between the different pieces of data that the CRM mapping provides is one area where we do want to see consistency or harmonization in how those relationships are expressed. So that's why we want to incorporate some workshops and handholding as we proceed with the, with the linked open data publication and the mapping through Karma.
One of the takeaways, and Emmanuel really encourages us to do this, and one of the takeaways is like just by creating simple data maps or diagrams that map your data to the CDOC CRM, even if it's just the relationship between an object and an artist or an object and the materials it's made up of, just by doing that simple exercise, you really have an amazing tool continue working with your data, and I would really encourage that as part of the collaborative exercises, that everyone gets the opportunity to even create small pieces of a data model, but that was a real foundational exercise for us.
Okay, well it's good to know. Thank you. Did that generate any follow-up questions? Pedro or Craig or Dwayne or Neil, anything you want to say or add?
No,
I just think that the data modeling point there is really valuable in being able to share with others, because they're really, at some conceptual level, there's not going to be a radical amount of difference from organization to organization. And so I think it's going to be helpful to both see it as a conceptual model that's a shared model, and then more of the, with the conceptual model of your materials mapped into CDOC, and then the more physical models will be more specific to your organizations. But I think it makes it a lot clearer for people to see that in pictures.
Right, I would think so.
This is Craig. I guess the other thing to add about the mapping stuff too is that I know a lot of people worry about making sure they get the mapping right, but I would view that as sort of an iterative process where you do the best job you can initially to map the data, and then as you get more input and understand things better, then you can always revise the mapping and improve it. It's not like you commit once and for all for exactly what that mapping is. So in fact, we've run this with the Smithsonian now, so we got some feedback from an expert on CDOC CRM, and so we're actually working on updating the models that we did for SAM, and then once those are done, we'll give them the revised models that will then reflect the some minor corrections and stuff in terms of the mapping we originally did, but then they can just reapply the models on the data that they already have and get the updated data.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If we think back to the presentation that Stephen Steed gave a number of months ago now, one of the points in there was the idea that in CDOC they're looking at the way of establishing shortcuts. So the other thing that your models will do is occasionally you'll need particular optimizations for particular types of applications or uses. And so his concept of the shortcut, which says, okay, there may be within CDOC like 5 steps between this node and this node over here, and maybe by introducing a new path in the model that just makes that one step for a particular use, it takes care of a lot of issues of conceptual understanding, of performance, of whatever else it might be. And so I think we want to think about how the data is used, and that gets to Craig's point that these will be iterative, because as we think about, well, we want to use the data for this purpose, you end up thinking about what your model is saying and how it's actually constructed.
Right, good point. Okay, well, I think, is it next week? Tuesday of next week, we're going to have the educational briefing with Europeana. So I hope you have that on your calendar. It should be interesting to see some of their use cases.
Yeah, and I'll send out a reminder email about that. Look for it this afternoon.
So if there are no more questions, I think, thank you. I hope if you have questions that you didn't think of asking, that's an afterthought, just, send them to me, and we can still get answers to you. But thank you very much for participating. Rachel, you want to say anything? No? Okay. Thanks, folks. We'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Roadmap is